right, George, welcome back. We had some positive feedback from our first show discussing Tucker and AI. So, we want to talk about the current NBA gambling scandal. So let me give a brief overview. So the current player, Terry Rozier, is accused of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. He told associates he planned to bench himself with a foot injury. These associates placed $200,000 in wages on Rozier to underperform. So that's one indictment. Second indictment includes a former player and current coach, Chauncey Billups. He's accused of participating in a scheme with mafia members for high stakes underground poker games and defrauding other players out of millions using sophisticated cheating devices. There's a third player, former player, Damian Jones, was accused of providing insider information to bet certain ways. And actually, a person who was not accused, current basketball coach Ty Lue, he's, however, associated very closely with Billups and Damian Jones, and he was seen at some of the poker games where those two were accused of participating. So that's what the scandal looks like. Let me play the initial take from a few sports personalities, George, and then let me get your thoughts on that.
Sure, sounds good.
For one incident after another, have I said Trump is coming. I'm watching a press conference with the director of the FBI. Tell me when we've seen that. We've seen people, we've seen accusations before. We've seen athletes get in trouble with the law before. You don't see the director of the FBI having a press conference. It's not coincidental. It's not an accident. It's a statement. And it's a warning that more is coming.
He's like, Trump's coming, y'all. Trump's coming. And, and I'm like, I hope he is. Because our sports world is corrupt and is promoting things that need to be cleaned up. But all Stephen A. Smith working for Bob Iger, all he can see is like, hey, this could mess with our money. Don't you understand what DraftKings and FanDuel have done for me and Disney and everybody else? But here's Kash Patel yesterday responding to Stephen A. Smith's lunacy.
Yeah, down the street. By the way, this was so wild. Stephen A. Smith, the sports commentator, suggested that this was revenge from the president for all the kind of left-wing activism of the NBA. Your response to that, 15 seconds.
I'm the FBI director. I decide which arrests to conduct and which not to conduct. That may be the single dumbest thing I've ever heard out of anyone in modern history, and I live most of my time in Washington, D.C. It's right up there with Adam Schiff. We arrest people for crimes.
All right, George, let me add one more thing regarding Kash Patel. So at the initial press conference, when he was talking about the arrests and allegations, he emphasized that it was for illegal gambling. That's what the arrests are for. So I mentioned that because I wanted to kind of discuss that maybe throughout our episode. But what is your take on the initial gambling scandal and what you heard, like the sports personalities, Stephen A. Smith, Jason Whitlock, and then obviously Kash Patel, what they have to say?
Okay, so on the initial, I guess there's two things. Let's take the last thing first. So Stephen A. Smith, I think it's pretty fair to say that if he's not running for president, he's positioning himself to be influential in the next election and possibly more elections in the future. I don't know if that's a larger situation that he's trying to leverage himself beyond sports media. If at some point he wants to kind of diversify his areas of expertise, or if he truly does want to make a run for public office. So while I'm not surprised he would comment on the NBA, I am surprised. I'm also not surprised with his take. Bringing in the president, I think, is ridiculous. This is about mafioso, especially the Italian mob in New York, coordinating with certain players in the NBA to defraud people and to make money through wire fraud and gambling. when you have the mafia, typically, especially, now it's sexy, especially after The Sopranos and all the other mob movies and so on and so forth. It doesn't surprise me that the FBI director is there to talk about taking down the Genovese crime family, Lucchese, whoever the heck they were. So that doesn't surprise me at all. So I think Stephen A. is just kind of like wedging in an issue that doesn't really exist. Now, as opposed to the gambling scandal, first of all, if you think they haven't been doing gambling for years, you're kidding yourself. That's been going back since the 50s and before. I think, what was it, the Cooney scandal back in like 56 or 50, whatever, with college basketball. I mean, how many times? And then you get James Harden, the moron that he is. After this got announced, the prop bets, he was propped at 20 and a half points. He scores 20 in the first quarter, misses his next 3 shots coming out. They pull him in the third quarter. So, I mean, if you don't think it's happening, you're kidding yourself. And I see you smiling over there. So I feel like maybe you agree with me. Maybe you should come in and tell me where I'm right and tell me where I'm wrong.
No, the James Harden thing, I heard that too. The reason I'm smiling is you think he's on it? That he did that after the arrest occurred? You think he's that stupid?
So he's that arrogant. I've had interactions with James Harden. Several times. When I worked for Morton Steakhouse, they come in because the Rockets are owned by the same person that owns Morton's. So when they used to come to the finals and play Steph Curry and the Warriors, they would have their meetings and their post-game dinners at Morton's. So I'm not saying I know the man personally or anything, but I see the way he interacted, and I see the way he interacted with his teammates, with me personally, with other staff members, and he doesn't strike me as someone that thinks that he can still do something like that, whether it's motivated by gambling or just because he just feels like it, just to screw with people. It wouldn't surprise me at all, frankly, having seen him live his life a little bit, that he might just do that because there's a scandal to get his name in the paper, even though nobody's betting on anything he's going to do with it. So I'm not accusing him of doing anything illegal, but I think he did something deliberate.
Well, if we could maybe digress a little bit, can you give details about your interaction with James Harden and maybe to give us like a rounder personality of his?
Well, he's a very entitled athlete, and he coming off a game or coming to a game, he's not someone that engages. He's very much in his own little bubble. He was on his phone a lot, which isn't unusual, but when you put a question to him directly, he's very evasive. And I don't mean like a very important question. I mean, like, what would you like to drink today, sir? Something as simple as that. And you can't get a straight answer. So like I say, he not only with us, but also with his other teammates, he was very disengaged, very much on his phone, very much doing his own thing. And I think that is kind of indicative of someone that might see this scandal and say, you know what? Let me screw with some people. This is a very interesting time for me to take the rest of the night off.
Okay. So what about, while Stephen A. Smith was speaking, a lot of people have commented that the banner at the bottom of the screen showed a lot of the sports gambling apps, and they actually
they removed them.
Pulled the banner.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, because I think some of the other clips I have in store we'll discuss in more detail, but I want to get your initial thoughts.
I mean, would it surprise me? Of course not. I mean, you're talking about, they own a sports betting company. They didn't, I forget which one they bought, but now it's ESPN Bets. So it's bad optics to have that flashing in the chyron on the bottom while you're talking about a multi-million-dollar scandal involving very well-known past and present NBA figures that now has spilled into the LeBron James kind of orbit too. Although, again, not accusing him directly of anything, but there's people that are close to him that are kind of caught up in this. So, I think they deliberately pulled it. Yes.
And that's Damon Jones. That's the third player. Damon Jones, the third player that I named. And LeBron James, he was actually like unpaid assistant coach for the Lakers, and he notified some bettors that LeBron James wasn't going to play in a particular game that nobody else knew, kind of publicly. So that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, it was prior to the injury report coming out and being public. He knew because he was close to the team that LeBron's injury was going to make him sit out that day, and so he told people before everybody else knew. And obviously, they got in before the lines changed and made a lot of money. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, the second clip I wanted to play was from Tim Donaghy. He used to be he's a former NBA official, and he got busted for fixing games probably 20 years ago now.
2006, I think.
Well, how many?
2006, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So almost 20 years. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. He recently
he went to jail
right
too.
After the scandal came through. So yeah, did
so
you have
Igor, he
a
went? It's important to remember he went to jail. Like, he's not accused. His case was adjudicated. He went to prison for this. So he has nothing to gain by diming people out, unless he's still doing it, which I don't know. But sorry, just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, he's not in the NBA anymore. You know, they kind of don't even talk to him since then.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, it's not like he has a pending case that by saying this stuff in public, it would help his pending trial. He's been through the court system. He's been to prison. He's been sentenced and found guilty. So the motivation, unless he's doing something now over and above in some other way, wouldn't help him one way or the other to say these things.
So theoretically, we should believe him, kind of thing.
That's my opinion. If you're asking.
Well, let me play the clip.
Okay.
DraftKings, I believe. NBA's FanDuel. Everyone's using it, but then they'll suspend a player for betting. $15 on a game for a whole season. I find it hypocritical, but this is the world we're in. Do you think there's something that's kind of shady in this whole thing by players or coaches or refs?
I think that, when I was there, that the league would come in, and if a team was up 2-0 or 3-0 in a series, they put the referees in a locker room and they'd show us 15 or 20 plays that they wanted us to concentrate on that night in the game. And those plays always went for the team that was down in the series and against the team that was up. So that's how they would manipulate the series. So the games would go from 3-0 to 3-1, 3-2. So it'd be a 6-7 game series. Basically I was, an NBA referee making great money, joined a couple country clubs and really got into golfing and betting big money playing golf. And after the golf matches were over, playing big money card games in the locker room, or even getting in a limo and running down to Atlantic City and gambling for, 15 hours straight playing blackjack. And got to the point where I was hanging around a lot of people that were in the gambling world. And one of the guys just said to me one day, hey, here's the lines on the games. Who you think's going to win? And I had just come from home, and I knew who was refereeing those games, and, who was going to be put in an advantage or a disadvantage based on relationships with the officials. And I rattled off 3 games for him, and, they all won. And he called me up the next day and, was shocked at how easy it was for me to pick winners like I did. Yeah. And we had started betting on, college football, pro football, baseball, and it just started spilling into me giving him tips on NBA games, and then NBA games that I officiated if I was in a meeting and I knew certain things were going to go on that night. And, once we stopped doing it because I felt, uncomfortable doing it, what I didn't know is he was passing that information over to people that were associated with organized crime, and they were betting millions of dollars on these games. And one time I was in Philadelphia, and a high school friend invited me to dinner, and with him was another guy that we went to high school with, and he was involved in organized crime. And he basically told me that he wanted to continue to get those picks that he was getting in the past, and if not, he was going to expose me to the NBA, or worse yet, have somebody visit my wife or kids in Florida. So I continued to give them the picks, hoping at the end of the basketball season that it was all going to be over with, and I was going to go about my life and never do it again. But it was discovered over a Gambino wiretap, and unfortunately, I ended up doing 15 months in the federal prison because.
All right, George. So there's two kind of different clips that we played there. And one more thing I want to add about Terry Rozier, the first player that I mentioned who faked a foot injury, is that he made 160 million in his career, but he owes 8 million to IRS. So it's might be connected to the second part that Tim Donaghy was saying. So it's interesting. So the second part of what he said is how he fixed games and how he got caught up in this illegal business. But the first part is kind of interesting too. He's kind of implying that NBA itself is fixing games on who's going to win and who's going to lose by kind of indirectly telling the referees how to referee games, so the outcome will be one way or another.
Are you asking me to comment on that?
On both things, yeah.
Okay, so as far as the NBA or any sports league fixing series, I mean, I've had conversations kind of loosely with my friends since I've been watching sports about stuff like that. I mean, how could you not? The money that's tied up for these leagues in 6 and 7 game series. I mean, if you think that they're not, I'm not saying telling them to cheat, putting a thumb on the scale, you're kidding yourself. They die every time there's a 4-game sweep. They don't want that unless it's in one round. If it's in a middle round somewhere, I mean, look, there's a couple of reasons, and you have to think from a business perspective. Now, I'm no genius, but you can see it. Sports revenue, the reason that they have all these playoffs and there's so much, it's not just about being in the news. It's about generating ticket sales. It's about generating more TV product. It's about getting on the internet, getting clips, having people follow you. All that generates tremendous amount of revenue for the people buying their product. So if they had a short series, which I think the fans would prefer. I mean, I know everybody says, oh, we love these long series. No, you don't, because you know what? You would just move on to another sport. There's always something to watch. There's so many sports. What you're being told to love it. Oh, look how much great baseball we have. Or look at how much great basketball we have. We have long playoffs, all this. Meanwhile, you're ignoring the regular season. So it's about getting these long series and creating more product. TV loves unscripted live product. Okay, you never get bored because you never know the outcome.
Yes.
So yes, they are absolutely doing things like that. It's baseball, it's NBA, it's football. If you watch these sports, the difference in how they call these games from regular season into the playoffs is night and day obvious. And as they go up the chain in terms of like how many teams are eliminated, the closest you are to a championship, the more they change the refereeing. It's blatantly obvious, whether they're told or whether they're just, it's implied or whatever the case is. That's absolutely happening. Absolutely happening. But that's not the same thing as being illegal. They get to control the product.
Yes.
Okay? That's their product to make. If I made an airplane and I wanted to paint it blue on Tuesday and white on Thursday, and the ones that I made on Tuesday are blue and the ones I made on Thursday are white, that's my prerogative. You know, the fact that you're betting on what color my plane is, that's not my problem. That's your problem for betting. So to the second part, I would say this. You cannot allow anyone in any position near these leagues to gamble on anything. Period, full stop. Because they get compromised and then backdoor they're in.
So I think let's transition to Michael Franzese, who's the former mob boss, and I think he's kind of implying the last thing you said. So let me play that clip.
You know, I was recruited back in 1994. They recruited me out of prison, the FBI and all the security from all the pro leagues to come and speak to their athletes about the dangers of gambling, because they knew I had a big gambling operation on the street. We had a number of bookmakers working for us, and a lot of athletes were gambling with us. So this has been going on forever. You know, I said this, you know, back in the days of prohibition, we had a 11, 12-year run. When I say we, my former associates, had a 12-year run prohibition, I always say it was the government that made the Mafia Cosa Nostra strong in this country. By giving us prohibition, we took advantage of it, made hundreds of millions of dollars. I was involved in a gas scam. You know, I had an 8-year run with that. It was great. We made some money. But those things go away. They come and go. Gambling has been the main business of the mob ever since guys came into this country and started up. They know it very well. They're very sophisticated. They know how to use these athletes and get around them. A lot of people think, you know, Pierce, that we have to go and put the arm on these athletes and extort them. People don't realize how much these guys gamble. You know, gambling is an extension of their competitive spirit. They raise the stakes in a competition. And guys that are making $20, $25 million a year, they're not going to be happy, you know, gambling $500 or $1,000. They gamble big and they lose big. And then they come to us and we can get them to do our bidding in certain ways. You know, so to, compromise the outcome of a game, remember, it's all about the point spread. It's not about winning or losing. You can get guys to manipulate the spread very, very easily, make a lot of money. As far as the cards, you know, it's a very sophisticated operation now. They got, they're able to see these cards through the table. But there's no doubt, no surprise to me that our guys are all over this. What did surprise me a little bit is that the extent of this, all 4 of the 5 families, you know, in New York were involved in this. Meaning this is very widespread. This is just the tip of the iceberg. That one guy that has 3,000, I think, recorded conversations and text messages, there was an informant there. This is going to be widespread. You're going to see a lot more things happening, no doubt.
All right, Joe. So a little bit about Michael Franzese. So yeah, he's a former mafia boss. I listen to his podcast once in a while. A couple of things he also said, like just in general, he claimed that the mafia killed the JFK, and he also claimed that the mafia killed Marilyn Monroe. That wasn't a suicide, as kind of the official story. So yeah, I mean, what do you think about his comments and how they're related to this scandal?
I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is right next to Bensonhurst. A hotbed of mafia activity, especially when I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s. So I'm not going to tell you I'm connected or anything like that, but I've had, you know, friends whose dads were involved, and maybe in a very loose way, they were moving around my neighborhood. They had certain activities. You know, I'm a kid. I was known as a nice kid in the neighborhood, so, you know, I never had any problems. But you hear conversations as you're walking down the block. New York City, it's very easy to hear and see information that, you know, isn't necessarily important, but you get a feel for how things go. And I can tell you that you can believe JFK or not, or all this stuff. There's too much of this nonsense. But I can tell you absolutely that this is the way the mob operates. I mean, you don't even have to take my word for it. Look at Goodfellas. Goodfellas is a direct, testimony from a reputed mobster who went to jail, went into the program, and kind of laid his life out. I mean, it's word for word. So if you think it's not happening, you're kidding yourself. That's why I say you really have to put the screws to the athletes and the ancillary people in the front offices. You know what? If you want a job with the Warriors, or you want a job with the Knicks, or you want a job with any sports team, you don't get to gamble. It's really that simple. You know, if you're a public official, you don't get to like gamble in the stock market, or you shouldn't. I know they do, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things that when you take a job or take a career, you have to give something up. Well, this is something you have to give up. And that's just the way it's going to be. And especially for the athletes themselves, the money is so astronomical. You know what? Find another way to squelch your competitive needs. It's really that simple.
All right, George. So let me play the last clip before we have a full discussion, because I think you keep implying things that the last clip also connects to. So let me play that right now.
Please do.
It's weird because he's the guy who rants against big pharma's manipulative advertising.
If you can advertise, you can manipulate people and change their opinion based on theatrics.
So many everyone gets a free bet.
We all want to win. Right? Let's win together.
You know what to do. You have music and people dancing and holding hands and spinning around in a wheat field. Like, that is so manipulative. And we are subject to manipulation. And when it's something that is so important, like making critical health decisions, there's so many of these commercials. Like, so many times I'm watching television, I'm like, how many goddamn drug commercials are there?
By the way, I agree with him. We are being manipulated. But change a few words from that rant, and you could say the exact same thing about how gambling is pushed. Casinos are also manipulative. They don't advertise the actual reality where people lose. Instead, they say things like winning, cashing in, opportunity. And Joe Rogan's a part of that.
Every game is another chance to cash in. Don't just watch the action, win with it. Every snap is loaded with opportunity.
That is just as manipulative as pharma ads pushing pills that may end up addicting you. In both cases, the collateral damage are the addicts we created along the way. And I guess I have to ask, maybe people think, oh, one's worse than the other. Is there that much of a difference between a drug addict and a gambling addict? No, really, I'm asking.
It's like, if you see the drug addict, you see him, he's shooting up or whatever it is, and you see him fainting, you go, oh, that poor bastard. But when you see a guy who's fully in the grips of gambling, trying to figure out how to get his money back, and he's all jazzed up with adrenaline, he doesn't understand why.
It's just like cocaine, it's just like drug abuse, it's just like the opiate problem, it's just like anything else. It could you and I both know people who have lost their lives gambling. Okay, you've seen people in pool halls. You see how they get, Joe Rogan. Man. There's no difference in the drug addict and the gambling addict.
No
Not
difference.
At
All right, George. So the big question regarding the NBA gambling scandal: big deal, not a big deal, or should we have discussed Tucker once again? My thoughts are the last clip is much bigger deal than the actual NBA scandal, and it's how the whole hypocrisy of everybody involved with gambling, and I guess everybody, a lot of people getting on a high horse and having superiority complex, talking down about the players who are cheating, because it seems like everybody is involved in this hypocrisy. So, what are your kind of initial thoughts? And I actually want to discuss maybe this a little bit in detail.
On hypocrisy, just generally, I mean, there's a reason why there's a small amount of people that run large corporations or are at the upper echelon of government power, and they sit there for years because they play ball. Okay, how many middle managers on the cusp of the C-suite who are eminently qualified don't get the job, or they don't stay in the job, why they're forced out? Because they're not playing ball. There's certain things that the average American will never know about every single industry in this country, including the political industry. So, you have to check it once in a while. But if you ever think you're going to eliminate it, you're absolutely kidding yourself.
So one interesting aspect about the legal gambling industry, right, is it's an industry in order for them to succeed, their consumer has to fail. There's no other option. That's the only way they'll succeed.
Look, I mean, yes, that's true, but see, I don't have a problem with the legal gambling aspect, because it was going on overseas with technology being what it is. This is not 1943 where you can only bet on the corner. Okay, you don't need a phone call to Vegas. All right, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. People can look it up about how Vegas is dying, and it's not as popular as it was 10 or 15 years ago. Well, yeah, because now legal sports betting online is going on. You don't have to go to Vegas. Well, I mean, it was happening underground in plain sight on these island casinos, that had web presences. You were betting hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands with people you don't know. So I don't think it's necessarily the industry. I think, okay, yes, it's an addiction. Well, so is drinking. So is driving fast. You know, there's everything that there is. There's an addiction perspective that goes along with it. There's food addiction. What are you going to do? Ban food? Are you going to stop everybody from advertising? McDonald's can't advertise anymore? I get it. Pharma, though, is different because pharma, a person of authority like a doctor, okay, someone who's supposed to know what your health interests are because they're more educated than you are giving you advice to take things that are designed to make you addicted. It's a completely different thing than someone who says, oh, look, you can win. Okay, if you're 18 years old, you're an adult. You should know there's upside and downside to everything. So the pharma thing is much more insidious because you have people with authority that society has said, these people are smart. These people know about the body. You should listen to these people. That's deliberately insidious in a way that gambling or any kind of advertising could ever be.
So DraftKings is a big gambling site. FanDuel is a big gambling site. And a lot of the sports podcasts, they're sponsored by these sites, right? So
correct.
They're not going to say things that they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them, right? We could kind of say that whatever they say about these gambling scandals is going to be very soft and non-controversial when it comes to gambling. There's
Absolutely.
a new
they
website.
Have to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go right ahead.
There's a new website called Cheddar that's going for 18 to 21-year-olds under the premise that it's not gambling, but it sounds like it's exactly like gambling. And it's trying to be sort of like TikTok and Draft and Tumblr, and copy DraftKings and FanDuel. So try to get kids addicted at an earlier stage. That's a couple of the things where like they're kind of pushing gambling, and nobody's actually allowed to kind of give an honest opinion about gambling. And I think the point to me, Rogan comes out as a huge hypocrite. Oh my God, a huge hypocrite. And I think that's what CoffeeZilla tried to pinpoint in that video. And by the way, he did the same thing with Theo Vaughn, another podcaster that also gets sponsored by one of the gambling companies. And he responded back to CoffeeZilla saying, hey, we're doing everything by the book. We're taking money from them. That's it. And Rogan never responded to that. But I know what I think CoffeeZilla is talking about, Rogan, specifically Rogan, is Rogan reportedly made $100 million from Spotify to do his show, to do it any way that he wants to. CoffeeZilla actually said that number is $250 million. So I think what CoffeeZilla is saying is like, when you make so much money, you can get on your high horse and you can give honest opinion about everything because like nobody like owns you at this point. So when you're taking money from DraftKings, that's kind of, you are a hypocrite. Like there's no way to sugarcoat that. You can't be talking about big pharma being addictive and saying how the gambling industry is not pushing it. That's why that clip when he had a guest who's basically saying, "Hey Joe, pharma is just gambling is just as addictive as pharma." That's like a kicker, right? I mean that brings out the hypocrisy right there. So to me, Rogan like looks worse than anybody in the video that we discussed. Honestly,
you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Sorry, you just are. It's you're conflating two different subjects. Look, if I have a talk show and I'm sponsored by Oreos,
yes,
okay, Oreos are addictive. I could get somebody diabetes in 100 years. Does that make me a hypocrite because I'm calling out pharma? Which advertiser? Which advertiser can you?
Yeah,
I understand, but okay, let's say I'm making 100 million. It doesn't matter, whatever the amount is. I have a successful show. Tell me which advertiser I can take whose hands are completely clean Is it the finance companies like Merrill Lynch and, JP Morgan? Which advertiser can I say is completely clean? Look, you had the wine shop, right? If you gave me advertising dollars, and I'm railing against pharma, well, you're selling an addictive product too. Where does it stop? Coke, McDonald's. I can't think of one thing that doesn't have an addictive kind of characteristic to it if it's taken too far. So you would just have to stop advertising completely, and then nobody can make any money.
So when do you remember when the Sam Friedman, that crypto thing blew
Sam
up?
Bankman-Fried.
Yes.
Bankman-Fried. Yes.
So I remember Rogan was basically saying that he was asked to advertise, and he was talking to a guest. I don't remember who the guest was, and he was kind of once again getting on a high horse and saying, a lot of people ask me to do things, but then I decide whether I should push something or not push something. He was kind of pushing this moral agenda. And Rogan, he pretends that he's just a regular guy. But even recently, I think it was when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, New York Times actually had a post. They're like, oh, where's Joe Rogan? How come he didn't make a comment? Like, he's like this national spokesperson for us. Like, Joe Rogan is this national spokesperson. Like, he because he isn't, but he kind of is. And I think what you're saying, well, what are non-corrupt sponsors? That's what CoffeeZilla is saying. None. That's why you have $250 million, so you don't have to take any more.
Yeah, but you have $250 million because of those sponsors, though. Okay, Spotify couldn't give him that contract if they weren't receiving sponsors for his show. That's been going on since radio was invented. I mean, that's just the way the business model is, so I don't understand. Okay, theoretically, I get what you're saying, but then you have to eliminate entertainment completely. I mean, where does the money come from?
Okay, so and you because I didn't know that, and you're saying that's the fact that, because the way I understand what Rogan said is that he didn't want to take the Spotify deal if it came with clauses, and now you're saying it's a clause. So that's
no, that's not what I'm saying. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
So we're doing this podcast, right?
Yes.
If nobody watches, then there's no incentive for anybody to advertise. Okay. So the advertiser, we don't get paid. Okay. Yeah. The only way you get paid is if there's eyeballs on your product.
Yes.
And then people say, oh, people are watching this. Let me slip in some information about what I do so that they'll see it. And then I'll pay for that time, which enables them to continue to run this product.
Yes.
Okay. Now on TV, this has all been built in over 60, 70, 80 years. So it's just automatic. And then it's a matter of percentages. As you get more of an audience, you get more advertising. On a podcast, when Joe Rogan started the podcast, he didn't have sponsors. It was just him doing a podcast, but he got so many views that then he got sponsorship offers. Then he got more sponsorship. Then he got a Spotify deal. I mean, and I don't know the exact, the exact line of how things went down XYZ, but I can tell you from running the YouTube channel, when I crossed over a certain number of subscribers, I had some small people approach me to do little things. I made a few bucks here, a few bucks there to mention their thing. Nothing to write home about. But, I don't have 10 million, 12 million, 50 million people watching my stuff.
Yes.
But that's just how it goes. It's not a clause. But when you're a kid, right, you do what your parents tell you. Why? Because they feed you. Okay? They may not, it used to be corporal punishment, but obviously that's not the case anymore. Your parents provide for you, so you have to do what they like. If you do something deliberately to piss them off, there are going to be consequences. They could drop you. Obviously that's illegal, but you know what I'm saying? If you have a sports betting sponsor that is giving Spotify $10 million a year, of which some of that is paying your salary, you have to be mindful of what you're going to say. That's not the same thing as sponsoring Sam Bankman-Fried, who has these weirdo tendencies and looks super shady. That's a personal endorsement. So he would be making a commercial like Tom Brady made a commercial. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, George, but yes, but I'm not sure we're on the same page, even if I see what you're saying. Because to me, a lot of people on television, right, they're like neutral, right? Because like, hey, we could get sponsors from anywhere, so we shouldn't say anything negative. So what you're saying is, then what is his statement about pharma? What if big pharma comes to Spotify and say like, hey, we want to sponsor you now? Then what does Rogan say?
They would never come to him. He's an enemy of theirs on a lot of levels, and I think it's personal for him because of the ivermectin and all that stuff. You know, he got called a liar and a snake oil salesman. I don't think he would ever take that on a personal level. He would just tell Spotify, "Hey, I can't. We need to find somebody else." I think that's a personal issue for him. I think that's the only industry aside from maybe a Sam Bankman-Fried or whatever. Again, I don't know the man personally, but I can tell you he's been in MMA and he's been an announcer for UFC and all that for what, 15, 20, 25 years? Mm-hmm. They have huge investments in Vegas. If you don't think he's not a believer in personal responsibility for gambling, you're kidding yourself. He absolutely is. He's a believer in personal responsibility for drinking. He feels bad for the people that are addicts, but by the same token, hey, that's your choice. There is something called discipline. At some point, you have to understand, I am weak in this area, so I cannot continue to be in this area. I need to be away from it.
So, George, I would say only this thing. So the way I interpreted what CoffeeZilla was saying, I think we interpret the same way. He makes a lot of money. He doesn't need to promote legal gambling. I would say the only difference that I see with CoffeeZilla, and I don't know if you watch his show, his premise is that a lot of like this digital gambling, with the crypto and all that stuff, he's the kind of the exposer of that. He's kind of the newspaper detective of the internet. He exposes all these schemes. My statement is with crypto and even with gambling, those who are kind of are caught, I guess, in that you call it an epidemic. I'm not sure if I feel sorry for them, because at the end of the day, they kind of want to get greedy. It's not the people who play the slots and just want to win a few to have fun. These people, when they get greedy, and then when it doesn't work that way, they're screaming that they're victims. So I'm saying that with a grain of salt, that I'm like, that I'm outraged, morally at Rogan. To me, the hypocrisy is blatant. So I want to separate my moral indignations versus the hypocrisy. That's okay. Kind of what I want to say. So I don't want to get on my high horse because, like I said, they're trying to get greedy. That's where I stand on. They don't need to gamble, and even the term epidemic that they're addicted. That probably needs to be examined as well. I'm not sure if I 100% believe in that either.
Oh, I totally believe in it. I've had several experiences with people close in my life that had various addictions. And I can tell you, it's very easy to fall in. Not to sound morally whatever, but I knew myself well enough when I was in my late teens and early 20s, never to try hard drugs, because I probably would have been a cocaine addict. I was, I loved the adrenaline, the crazy frenetic energy. And I had a lot of it on my own, but I knew if I ever tried that, I would never be able to get away from it. So I never did. I drank like an animal and I partied like crazy, but I knew enough about myself to know, like, this is not for me. This might be for somebody else, but definitely not for me, this particular thing. So yeah, it is. I mean, again, aside from that, it is an addiction, but you go in knowing that there's a possibility that you could be hooked, and the players And the people connected to sports get all these lectures. They have people come in and talk to them as they come into the league every season. So I have absolutely no problem like cutting them loose. You know what's at stake. If you can't handle it, then don't try. Do something else. Bet with your kids, with like plastic chips if you have to for the adrenaline rush, and cheat them. You're taking a chance to flush away generational wealth. And more than that, your health will eventually be impacted. And if your name, after all, like look at Chauncey Billups, he's in the Hall of Fame as of this year, right?
Yes.
Okay. If he becomes a pariah, all his hard work will be for nothing.
Yeah. So final thought, George. We kind of didn't, maybe you kind of implied it, but you didn't say it out directly. NBA should not be in business with the gambling leagues, correct?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
The league can be in business.
Okay.
The players must be, and the players and the people that work for the league and the teams are not cannot bet. Period. The end.
So all the employees, not just players, like any
anybody that has access to information. I'm not talking about the janitor. Okay. Yeah. I'm talking about people mid-level management and up that would have real-time information on player health, on strategies, on who's getting traded, all that kind of stuff. Those people must be cut off. Absolutely cut off.
It's insider trading, basically. That's what it is.
It's insider trading, of course. Yeah. And again, it's worse than that, because let's say I work for a team, right? And I don't gamble.
Yes.
Okay. But I have some money and I like to get hookers, or I like to go to strip clubs. Okay. Yes. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Something salacious.
Right.
And that's where the mob operates, right? That's where shady guys operate. So I'm befriended by somebody who has connections. They know that I work for, let's go back to the Warriors, okay, as a mid-level employee. Well, now they know that I'm cheating on my wife. But I love my wife, but I have a problem. I just like hookers. And I have 3 kids that I don't want to not speak to anymore. So now they got me. Okay. Now they got me. So now they can get inside information to bet these games.
Yeah.
Okay. In a way that they wouldn't have. Now, you're not going to be able to stop that. But that's how the players get hooked too. They start out gambling a little bit. Then they start in with the cards. Then they start in going to these high stakes games that are not legal.
Yeah.
And that's when they get them. So you want to minimize the amount of opportunities they have to fall into situations where they lose control of their own destiny. That's really the problem.
All right, George, I think great place to stop. Thank you for your thoughts. I thought it was a very interesting debate. It wasn't like we were agreeing with each other the whole time. So yeah, it was very nice debate.
Yeah, I think we came to the same conclusion kind of in a roundabout way. I think about things a little differently than you do, but I think generally speaking, there's certain things that you can't ignore, right? I mean, there's certain things that you just are absolute truths. So yeah, thanks for having me, Igor. It was fun talking about this. I wish there was a better subject. I wish we were talking about the Yankees.
Thanks for bringing that up.
I just wish we were talking about the Yankees being World Series champions and not the NBA gambling like idiots and the Dodgers and all this kind of thing. So yeah, maybe we'll be talking about Shohei Ohtani next year. Hopefully he's dirty and we sully his reputation a little bit. With his buddy.
He probably is, but he's a hero right now.
Yeah, he's good right now, but maybe one of these days. You never know. All right, Igor.
Thanks,
I guess this is it, right?
Talk to you next time. Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to watch us.